Okay, Shulam Aleichem, everybody. We are in a Masechta Avodah Zarah Daf Tes Zayin Amar Aleph, right on the top. Omer of Ada Bar Ava, 6 lines in the top. Omer of Ada Bar Ava. Ada Bar Ava says we're in the middle of a sugya of what you're allowed to sell to a guy, not allowed to sell to a guy. Ada Bar Ava says Ein Moichelen Ashoshiyos Shel Barzel. You cannot sell them pieces of metal. My timer, why? Meshum the Chol Sheminayu. Because they're going to take from it and make it into Klei Zayin. They're going to make weapons out of it. Asks the Gemara, so why just raw pieces of metal? Shovels or anything that's metal that they can still melt down and make it into weapons. Amar Rav Zvid, Befarzela Hindua. What does Befarzela Hindua mean? We're talking about metal from India. Very interesting. Because that's a certain type of metal, and you use that metal only to make weapons from them. That's the only thing you use it for. So, but other types of metal that you make all kinds of things, you're allowed to sell to a guy, because you don't have to assume that if I give him a raw piece of metal, he's going to make it into a weapon. He might make it into other things as well. But this parzela indua, that's something that they only use for weapons, and that's why you're not allowed to sell to them. Says the Gemara, and why nowadays you sell it. Yeah, you sell even metal from India. So why is it mutter? That type of metal is only used to make weapons. So why can you sell it nowadays? Amar Rav Ashi leparsoy de magnu ilovan. No, this is talking about selling it to the Persians, because the Persians don't make weapons out of it, or they do, but they use it to protect us from harm. That's what they use it for. Lamaisa, it's so interesting because Tosfos, top Tosfos here says, the Gemara asks, in the Gemara's days, when Persia, right, you had Bavel, and then you had, after Bavel is Persia, Greece, the Yavanim, and then you had the Romans. So part of when the Gemara was written during the times of when the Persian Empire was ruling the world. So the Gemara wanted to know, in those days, why, in the Gemara's days, why were you allowed to sell India, metal from India to the Persians? Gemara says, no, the Persians don't use it for Klei Zayin, they don't use it for weapons. Now Tosfos, top Tosfos says, L'parsoy de magnu alon, says Tosfos v'nira. Now Tosfos is written, Rab Tzvi, Rabbi Yoel, Shalom Aleichem. Yeah? Tosfos says, and Michol, Shalom Aleichem. Almost missed you. Parsoy de magna alon. Tosfos says, v'nira. How long after the Gemara was Tosfos written? How many years later? A lot of years, right? How many years later? Could be 800 years, right? Approximately 800 years, right? The Rambam and Rashi lived in the 12th century. So you're talking about times of Rashi? Yeah, you're talking about like 800 years later. Tosfos on this Gemara, top Tosfos says, V'nira de anan, even us, 800 years later. Nami Sharinan, how are you allowed to sell metal to Goyim? So Gemara says, V'nira de anan nami shina hashlim k'loichom k'leizayim high time. We're also allowed to sell it to non-Jews for this reason, because it's not for sure they're going to make weapons out of it. They might make stuff that protect us. So Mamela it's mutter. Right. Is Israel allowed to sell? I mean, this is a big shaila now. Could Israel sell missiles? Right, we spoke about it a little bit yesterday. Yeah, over here it sounds like if you're selling to a guy, and you know the guy is going to make weapons out of it, you're not allowed to sell it. You can't sell weapons to a guy.
It will defend us in the long run because we're making money off of it. So technically it will defend.
Then why wouldn't it be a svara in the Gemara also? The Gemara doesn't use that svara. That would have been true in the times of the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't rely on that. But the Gemara, I guess the Iron Dome, that would be mutter, right? The Iron Dome is
sell to people
for protection purposes. Anything that's protected. No?
Maybe, but let's say we go to war to them, then it's protecting them. It's protecting our enemies.
Right.
Are we saying protecting our enemies? Can we protect our enemies?
My son.
Better not to deal with enemies.
My sons. Yeah, what?
Better not to deal with enemies.
Yeah, better not deal with enemies. Yeah. Okay. Okay, מה נשמע? what am I missing? ביזנס? עכשיו, הוא בא לדף יומי.
מה לעשות?
מה? אי אפשר. אתה בא לדף יומי, תרד מביזנס.
אם אנחנו מדברים על הברזל, אפשר להרחיב אותו, אפשר להרחיב אותו, אם זה ריבה או לא ריבה, אתה מבין?
Okay, Chevra, we started to 2 dots, Daf Zayin Amud Aleph, 2 dots. It's around 8 to 10 lines on the top. The Mishnah says that you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa to a guy. What does a behema gasa mean? Para, bull. How do you define a behema gasa? A large, non-domesticated animal, right? That's, I think, how the English translation I saw earlier says. A behema gasa could be domesticated also?
Domesticated means
Doesn't mean
you can use it around the house.
yeah, you know, chamor זה יכול...
Domesticated as opposed to wild.
Wild.
So
Uh-huh.
domesticated
חמור,
How does he translate it, Tepsivi? What is a behema gasa?
חמור, סוס.
Behema gasa is agolam misyachim. Agolam misyachim.
Calves are foals.
Calves or foals. Those are behema gasas. It's examples of behema
goats
gasas.
and sheep are darker.
Okay.
So if they're not goats and sheep, then the other ones are behemoth goats.
Aha. So anyway, the Mishnah says you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa to a non-Jew. We had a whole sugya about why not, and we'll see again over here in a moment. Agolam misyachim. What about calves and foals? That's a shiur. Rabbi Yehuda's mater. If it has a broken leg, then you're allowed to. So Gemara says Tanya, Yehuda mater b'shvura. Why is it matter to sell it to a guy if the behemoth is shvura? So once it cannot live like a behemoth shlema, so then it will never be ru'uya l'malacha. And if it's never ru'uya l'malacha, there's no chashash. Remember earlier we said the behemoth gasa. The problem is that the bailam might violate Isser Shabbos or other Isurim if it's ru'uya l'malacha. So here it's not ru'uya l'malacha, it's no problem. So that's why he's probably buying it l'shchita. Right, you assume that if he's buying an animal with a broken leg, obviously, why is he buying it? It's not usable. Can't use it for service. So he's buying it l'shchita, and that's not a problem. For shchita is not a problem. Okay, says the Gemara. Amru lo, it's the Chum set Rabbi Yehuda. What do you mean? You could have this egel or siach that you're allowed, according to you, allowed to sell when it's shavura. They could do revia. They can mate. They can cause it to mate, and they'll have a child. The kivan dem rabbiyan olel v'yoledes asur l'shehuye. So once you're waiting for this egel or siach to give birth, so during that time, what are you going to do? During that time, what are you going to do? You're going to use it. You're going to work with it. So it should be a chashash. You might do malach with it. Amul hen l'kshetei. Rabbi Yehuda says, yeah, right. He holds that physically. A shavura cannot give birth. It's never going to give birth. So he says, yeah, liksheteled, meaning skeptically. Yeah, when it gives birth. Meaning Rashi says, liksheteled, it's never going to give it. It's never going to give birth. So that's why it's mutter. Alma says the Gemara, so you see from Rabbi Yehuda that a behemoth shavura loy mekabeles zachar. Yeah, when a nekeva feels broken, right? So it already has so much pain, it's not going to be soivel, the pain of a zachar mating with her. So that's what you see from Rabbi Yehuda, and that's Rabbi Yehuda's svara, that's why a behemoth shvur is not going to...
And the problem of asur shiur...
לא למלאכה, לא למלאכה.
So right away you're going to shecht it. Yeah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't keep it to have children because it's not going to be mekabel zachar. So you're going to shecht it right away.
If you do keep it to have children...
Then we're afraid that as you're waiting for it to have a child, you might also use it in the process. And if you're using it, we saw yesterday, the day before, there's a chashash of doing malacha with it on Shabbos. There's a whole other chashash that you get involved with.
She's not ready to be worked with.
Yeah. Okay, says the Gemara weiter. Ben beseira matir besus. Ben beseira is matir to sell a horse. So even though the Mishnah says a behemoth gasa you're never allowed to sell, a horse is different. Tanya says the Gemara Brisa. Ben beseira matir besus. Why? Mipnei shu oisa by malacha she'ein chayav nolel chatas. The whole chashash of behemoth gasa is you might come to work with it on Shabbos, whether you're doing mechamer, shvisas behemoth, and you'll violate the isser malacha on Shabbos. A rechiva, what is a sus used for? To ride on it, right? And we know that a chai noises atzmai. Right, if you're riding on an animal, right, really, if you're a chai, if you're alive, you're really carrying yourself. So Mavela, the sus is not really doing that kind of malacha in terms of rechiva. It's only with a masa and a chamar. But if you're alive and you're riding it, it's not a problem. It's not a malacha shechev lechatas, and therefore it's mutter. That's Ben Beseira's shita. For Rabbi Yoser, Rabbi says it's aser. Neshnei dvarim. Echad mishum toiras klei zayin Ve'echad mishum toiras behema gasa. Now, what does this mean? The Gemara is going to explain. Bishloima toiras klei zayin. I understand why. For Susim has a din of klei zayin. You know why? Ikad the katl b'sechufe. We're not used to this, but if you watch movies, war. Not that anybody watches movies over here, but you see they're going out to war with horses, right? And let's say they lose their sword, they lose their weapon. What do they use? They use the horse itself, right? They use the hooves of the horse to kill. So the horse has a din of a klei zayin. So just like you're not allowed to sell a klei zayin to a guy because the guy's going to use it to kill, the sus is also a weapon. It's also a form of a weapon. So mameli, you're not allowed to do that. So I understand why the Chachamim, why Rebbe argues on the Beseira with regard to a sus.
That's the last resort. That's the last
It's
resort.
true, but still it has a Teres Klei Zayin. It has a Teres Klei Zayin.
Someone's breaking into someone's house. The only thing that they can defend themselves is a pan. Technically, you could say a pan is a weapon.
Okay, but very good. That's it. Right? Kishmak. Yeah. He says, so anything should be a weapon, because if you don't have a gun in your house and you're being robbed, you're gonna go to your pantry. You're gonna take out a pan. You can take a pot.
Going to talk about that, about the shiur.
Oh, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, it's going to talk about the shiur. Because
Oh, okay.
some things are more capable than others.
Right, right.
That's more davar matzah or not?
Davar motzei. What do you mean?
Probably more often the soldiers use their
Source, a
What
horse.
about a kitchen knife?
No, we bought
So you can say
knife.
Kitchen knife
More
could
like
be a
what?
klei zayin. A kitchen knife could be a klei, yeah, because that's a knife. That's by definition a klei zayin because it kills. That's something that's sharp.
Dull knives and there's very sharp knives.
Uh-huh.
Sharp knives are very, very sharp.
Uh-huh.
And the dull knives, some can be very,
Uh-huh.
you can't do anything with
Uh-huh. Okay. Elo Torah's bein megasa mahi. Why does the sus? What is Rebbe arguing on Beseira? Why is the sus? Let's make some room for Mo and Gabe. Why is the sus have a Torah's behema gasa? What's the problem with selling to a guy a behema gasa? It's because you're going to do a malacha. But a sus, you're not going to do a malacha with. Why? Because chay noisas atzmai. So why does Rebbe say it's asa because of behema gasa? Omer Rabbi Yochanan l'kshiyazkin. Because the sus is going to become old. And what's going to happen when a sus is old? A real old horse. You're familiar with horses, Mo? Gabe, you guys were ever horseback riding? Yeah? We went to, we're not going to tell the story with Shalom. We went to horseback riding in Colombia. We're in Colombia, in the country in Colombia. We went to horseback riding in where? What was the place?
Alps, the Andes.
The Andes?
I have no idea.
It was gorgeous. Anyway, bottom line was, this guy got a horse. Let me tell you something. That horse wasn't horsing around, all right? This horse was chazak.
Style.
Ooh.
גיבור כזה.
He had to get off. He didn't want to go on. I had an old horse. He barely could carry me. Yeah, it depends what kind of horse you get. I had a really old horse. It was just groaning and moaning, trying to get me off because it was so old. It couldn't carry me. Yeah, we're up to Zayin Amud Aleph. Almost to the min. Omer Rabbi Yochanan.
Young horse, you have to dominate.
You got it? Okay.
Dominate you.
So what is it?
You have to dominate. The young horse, you have to dominate.
You have to. You have to know how to do it.
Otherwise, it's
To
going
know how to do it.
you.
But when it's old, the horse doesn't want to. The horse doesn't want to carry a rider once it's old. So Rebbe says it's true that a horse is meant
Jewish cowboy.
for people to ride on it, so it's not a chashash malacha. But you know when there is a chashash malacha? When the horse gets older and you can't ride on it, so what are you going to use the horse for? Yeah, you try to use the animal for whatever it's worth. If you can't ride on a horse, what are you going to use it? You're going to use it matchinoi berechayim b'Shabbos. You're going to use it on a mill, right? To do the malach of toichen, of grinding. Yeah, and then that's a malacha da'iraisa, and any time you saw be'em megasa, the chashash is that the guy is going to use it for malacha da'iraisa, and you're going to be over shvisas behemte. Amar Rabbi Yochanan halacha k'mem b'seira. Yiboilahu, says the Gemara. Yiboilahu shor shel patom, an ox that you fed, you try to fatten it, right? So you could sell it for a better price, and it's so fat that you can't use it for malacha. I'm not familiar. I'm not a farmer here. I'm not a guy who raises cattle. Ayom asim kazeh ken? You take
They
a.
don't let them move, and they give them rice, and they become very fat.
Okay. Mahu, what's the halacha?
Pitum.
Okay, so if you have a shor that's so fat, you can't do any malacha with it. Could you sell it to a non-Jew?
Only food. It's only
Yeah, can you
food.
sell it to a non-Jew? The whole issur to sell a behemah gasa to a non-Jew is a non-domesticated animal because the non-Jew is going to do malacha on Shabbos, might still belong to you, and you're going to be over in shvisas behemah, right? We spoke about it the last 2 days.
Okay, you allow
But
to.
here, if you know that the shor is not meant to be worked with because it's too fat,
So you're allowed to, but not in the holiday. Not, so you're allowed to. Otherwise, going to eat it till you make
says
it.
the Gemara, Tiboil Rabbi Yehuda, Tiboil Rabbanan. It's a shaila according to Rabbi Yehuda, and it's a shaila according to Rabbanan. Let's see. Tiboil Rabbi Yehuda, it's a shaila according to Rabbi Yehuda. Atkan like a shor Rabbi Yehuda. Only in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda was matter by a behemah gasa to sell to a non-Jew, ela b'shavura. If the behemah has a broken leg, a broken leg, you're for sure not going to work with it. So then, avada, when the guy buys it, he's buying it to shecht it, because you can't work with an animal that has a broken leg. So there, Rabbi Yehuda was matter, he permitted to sell it to a non-Jew. Aval hai, but in such a case where the ox doesn't have a broken leg, it's just really fat.
Broken leg.
Right? So here, the chimashile, what's the kind of going to do? What's the buyer going to do? He's going to buy it, and he's going to diminish the food until it becomes skinnier. And then asir l'chlal malacha, and then he's going to work with it, and then he's going to come to be over Isser Shabbos. So maybe asir, maybe Rabbi Yehuda says it's asir. So maybe Rabbi Yehuda says over here it's asir. So we can't prove from our mission that Rabbi Yehuda's matir to sell a behemah gasa that has a broken leg, that you're also allowed to sell a shar that's fat. Because when you sell a shar that's fat, the guy's going to let it starve a little bit, make it skinny, and then he's going to work with it on Shabbos. So you don't have a raya. Oidilma, or maybe afil rabbanan, or maybe even according to Rabbanan that say that if an animal has a broken leg, you're still not allowed to sell it to a non-Jew. Lika asri hasa, maybe only over there they said it's asr. Ela distame lav l'shchita kai. Because over there, it's minastam, when it's behemah shvura, it's not a medus l'shchita. It's not for sure he's going to shecht it. Aval hai, but anytime you buy a fattened ox, why does a guy buy a fattened ox that's not even royal malacha? Because he wants to shecht it. He wants to buy the fattest ox on the market so he can shecht it right away. So maybe afilu Rabbana Shara. Here the Rabbana will say, here you can assume right away that it's mutter because he's going to buy it to shecht it. So the Gemara doesn't know. Again, the shaila becomes a shar shel patam. If I'm allowed a Jew who basically had an ox that he fattened up, so he can charge more money for it, but it's so fat now that you can't use it immediately from malacha. Can you sell it to a non-Jew? Could you assume the non-Jew is going to shecht it, and maybe it's mutter? Or no, maybe he's going to starve it a little bit and then work with it, and then it's asr. Tashama says the Gemara, Damar Vidamar Shmuel, shall base Rabbi. This is an interesting story. Rabbi Yehuda Anasi, right? He had a lot of people working in his household. He was a very wealthy guy. Hayimakriven shar shal patam biyoim edam. So the people in Rebbe's household, they used to be makriv, a carbon, on the day of the festival of Avodah Zarah. How are they allowed to do it? Why? Because this was a regular tax. Yeah? That's what, there was a regular tax. Okay, so in other words, the behemoths, everybody had to give an animal to the king. It wasn't clear which animal was going to be used for Avodah Zarah. This was part of the tax on the holiday. So they would take it from Beis Rabbi, and chiser arba rivavan. Rabbi took out 40,000 coins, and he bribed the king, I guess the government, the kingdom. She'ein makriven oisayim. He asked the king, I'm going to give you my ox for tax, not evading taxes. I just don't want you to use it for your festival, for Avodah Zarah. Use it the next day. So they listened to him. That's what they did. Chiser lamachar, the next year, Chiser arba rivavan, Rabbi paid another 40,000 coins as a bribe to the king. She'im makrivin osechai. Now he went one step further. He says, now I don't want you to be makriv this chai, right? Elo shachot. I want to bring it to you already shechted. This way, Rabbi wanted to avoid the king from taking his animal and shechting his animal for the Avodah Zarah. So Rabbi shechted it prior, before he gave it to him. He says, let me give you a shechted animal, I'll pay you 40,000 coins. And they let him. And the next year, Chiser arba ribavan, the third year, again he paid 40,000 coins. And this time he was able to convince them, She'ein makriven oisai kalikar. Allow us to get away with it. We don't want to give you anything for the festival. I'll just pay you money. I'll give you the 40,000 and that's it. So the Gemara said,
animals for
because there's an isser to sell a behema gasa to a goy. Usually, for sure, it's an isser usually to sell it any time. But when you know that it's collected as a tax on the day of the festival and it's going to be nikrav to their Avodah Zarah, then it's a big issue. So Rebbe wanted to avoid it.
They were makbid on making sure they collected animals?
Yes. The government, the king was makbid that everybody has to pay a tax to collect an animal, and they had like 10,000 animals, and from those animals they were makriv some of them. Now it wasn't certain which animals were going to be nikrav for the Avodah Zarah. So, but Rebbe still wanted to prevent his family from paying that tax. So the first year he asked them, look, don't take my animal for the day of the festival, be makriv the next day. The next year he said, I want to give it to you shechted, don't take it whole. And the next year he said, I don't want to give it to you all together, I'm going to give you the 40,000. So basically, he gradually tried to get out of this tax that the government imposed.
They knew that what he was doing was obvious.
He was getting 40 grand.
But they were getting 40,000, yeah.
Overt bribe.
Yeah. So
They knew he was just trying to avoid their minhag.
and therefore what?
And it was only like 1% or
Right.
let's say like 2% were doing it, so it didn't really make such a difference. No?
But he knew that the Jews they're not.
Not the Jew. This one Jew. This one guy.
It's Rebbe.
The Rebbe was not just one Jew; he was the representative class.
Okay, so there you see Rebbe was only concerned with the Isser of Avodah Zarah, using the animal for Avodah Zarah. Gemara says, my timer, why did Rebbe want them to take the shar when it's already shechted, but not when it's alive? Lav Mishum, the second year when he tried to convince them, yeah, don't take it alive, let me shecht it first. Why did he want that? What was the purpose in that? Gemara says, Dilma Asel L'Shahuye. Because the Mishnah says you're not allowed to sell a behema gasa to a goy because he might use it for malacha. And there might be a gzeira of shvisas behema on Shabbos. That's why Rebbe tried to prevent it. So what do you see from here? That the gzeira applies even to a shar shel patam, even a fattened shar. That was the Gemara Shaila. That's the Gemara wants to prove.
Yeah, because this was going to be shechted.
Oh, that's why Rebbe insisted, let me shecht it first. If I don't shecht it, then there's a shaila. It might be an isser. So the Gemara is proving from Rebbe's story, it's an isser even to sell a shar shel patam. Gemara says, Gemara says, no, is that really the reason that Rebbe did it? No. Gemara says, so why did he ask them the year earlier? Why did he say for tomorrow, not today? Elos, Gemara says, no, Rebbe had a different intention. You can't prove from Rebbe's story that it's usher to sell a fattened ox. The whole progression in Rebbe's story, how he gradually got off that tax, was because Rebbe miyaker milsaboy. Rebbe had, he had his vision of trying to get out of the tax, but he did it slowly. Why? Because he wanted to uproot it altogether. I'm only going to be able to convince the government 1 year at a time. I'm not going to be able to get what I want to get on the first year. And if I would have told him in year number 1, I'm paying you $40,000, let me get off of the tax, the king never would have listened. So slowly but surely, he got him used to it. He said first this and first that. He hemmed and he hawed. By the third year, he was able to get out of it. But you don't see from over here anything with regard to Behema Gasa, the Isser of Behema Gasa. You only see with regard to Avodah Zarah. That's what Rebbe's trying to get out of. Gemara asks, if the guy, the Ovid Kechavim, will allow the fattened ox to remain alive, Barya v'Ovid Malacha. He's going to get healthy, and now he's going to be able to do Malacha. The Gemara asks, the Gemara says, what does this mean? That we do that, yeah. Somebody who sells behemoths, patumas, fattened behemoths, bar Torah mashinale, we let a fattened shar, I guess, live in starvation for a little bit until it becomes weakened, and then he could do twice as much the work. And that's the chashash. Okay, so for now, Lamaisa, we didn't answer the question, the Yeboilu, whether you're fat and shar, you're allowed to do or not. We couldn't prove from Rebbe. That wasn't, I believe that wasn't answered. Okay, says the Mishnah. Ein moichel and duben v'arayas. You're not allowed to sell to Ovdei Avodah Zarah. You can't sell beers or lions. V'chol dover sheyesh boi nezek l'rabim. Anything that could harm many people, you're not allowed to damage other people, you're not allowed to sell to them. Right? I wonder, I was just on a hike the other day. I was like, that sometimes on hikes, these trails on Fryman Canyon, I was these. Okay, we'll talk out. But you go to these hiking trails. I think the law is you have to put them on a leash, right? You have to put these dogs.
Dogs?
Depends, I think Runyon you don't have to.
Run, you don't have to.
You have to, yes.
I don't know.
They have 20 feet leashes.
צריכים לשים את
Look.
הבעל הבית בליש.
It's scary business. These guys, they bring their horses. They look like bears. They look like wolves. And look, I'm not a big fan of I mean dogs. They make their dogs. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of dogs. I'm not a dog lover. But I tell my kids wanted a dog when they were growing up. I told them. Oh yeah, Gabe. Yeah. I told them if I have an extra ounce of energy, I want to spend it on you, not on a dog. Okay, that's it. I love you too much to waste my time.
Remote control guy they can get.
What?
Remote control ones.
Remote control.
אתה יודע, כלב זה החיה הכי טמאה.
Dog therapy. Okay, I'm not a big fan. But any.
כלב זה החיה הכי טמאה.
הכי טמאה.
הכי טמאה.
הכי טמאה.
כתוב, אתנן זונה ומחיר כלב.
I wanted earlier.
לא יבוא בבית המקדש.
מחיר כלב, yeah?
זאת אומרת, אתה יכול למכור קוברה,
Yes.
ולקחת את הקוברה, לקנות עז לקורבן, אבל כלב אתה לא יכול. אבל כלב זה...
Okay, Lamaisa, the Mishnah says Duban V'Arayas. I'm not sure who's in this market of selling beers and lions, but
הוא אומר, הערבים,
V'chol dover
יש לו ליין.
V'chol dover sheyesh benezek l'rabim. Anything that could damage or harm the public. What is V'chol dover coming to include? So it's coming to include weapons. It's coming to include, kalim that torture people. They used to have these devices, these torture devices. You're not allowed to sell it to a guy. Ein boinen emoim basiliki. This is an unbelievable word because I was just in Rome. Basilica. St. Peter's Basilica. Basilica means a church. Yeah. What do you hear over here? The Mishnah uses this word. Ein boinen emoim basiliki. You're not allowed to build a basilica with a guy. Gardoim or it's stadia. You're not allowed to build a garden. What's a garden? What does the art school translate? Garden?
Court building. Tiered
A
court.
tiered court building. Okay, I'm assuming secular courts. Its stadia is the Colosseum and the arena. Right? You're not allowed to build an arena. Obima and any type of platform. Because these are places that damage people. Okay?
Pushed to the deaths from the platform.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
Isn't one of the Shemets been
לא, זה הבסילקי. הבסילקי זה
They what? They had what?
אנשים
No,
מהזה.
no.
Dinan. It's Stavim b'nei Noach al Dinan, right?
בסילקי, הגרדום זה בניין אחד, לדון בו נפשות.
Right. I'm assuming they don't, these are courthouses that don't follow Torah law. Secular courts.
הבסילקי
Yeah.
זה מקום גבוה שזורקים אנשים.
They're looking no.
Yeah. The basilica is not the basilica that we know, but yeah.
אתה מבין, אצטדיה, מה זה אצטדיה? מה היו עושים באצטדיה?
Stadia is, what do you mean, gladiators?
יפה מאוד.
Yeah.
גלדיאטורים.
Yeah.
מביאים
Stadium.
אריות וזה.
By the way, we'll see in the Gemara later.
אתה יודע,
But we went to the Colosseum just now a couple of months ago. We'll see in the Gemara later. The Gemara is going to say that it's actually a mitzvah for a Jew to go to the Colosseum. Do you know that? It's a mitzvah for Yidden to go to the Colosseum, especially in Rome. Why? Because when Titus destroyed the Beis HaMikdash, he brought 90,000 plus Jewish slaves from Yerushalayim, from Eretz Yisrael. He sold them in Rome. And a lot of the Jews who lived in Rome prior to the Churban were able to be paid the Shvuyim. They were able to buy them. But a lot of them remained slaves. And what did they do with them? They forced them to build the Colosseum. They forced them to fight the gladiators, to fight. Really? Oh, yeah. And the Gemara is going to say, we're going to learn it. Make sure to come the next couple of days. Gemara is going to say, it's a mitzvah to go to the Colosseum. Why? Because if a Jew fights in the Colosseum, they would, I don't know if you ever watched the Gladiator, these movies. Yeah? Sometimes they would have a vote, thumbs up or thumbs down, whether the guy or the bull should finish him off.
Right.
So the Chazal said, make sure to go to the Colosseum because you should vote.
Thumbs
To
up.
let him go. And you could save a life. And if it's thumbs down and he dies, he gets killed, then his wife will be in Aguna. So we need two kosher Aiden to come testify. So Chazal said it's a mitzvah to go to the Colosseum. So we'll see in Daf Ches.
Isn't the mitzvah now?
There's no cause.
Now it's a mitzvah to go to the Clippers games. Only the Clippers games. Ask my sons. These are the modern day Colosseums. The modern day gladiators are the Clippers and the Lakers. But anyway.
Ben Brotman times the Eden should go on jury. They shouldn't be on jury. You could save a life.
And it's a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah any life. You're saying it's shvichas damim. Like even a guy.
זה נקרא קליפות, לא קליפר.
Interesting, because we had a brisa earlier that if a guy falls into a pit, you're allowed to move on and you don't have to pull them out because l'samar adam re'echa, only re'echa.
Oh, you put a cover.
If oivet kechavim, I'm assuming it's oivet kechavim, not the goyim today. Not sure.
Put a cover.
They're gonna take me off. They're gonna take me off social media when they hear this. Okay.
If a guy fall to a pit, you put a cover to make sure that it's.
Aha. Put a kisa. Yeah.
Good guy.
Right.
Also, you can walk on it or stand on it. You know.
You're on
Okay.
video, you're on YouTube now.
Yeah. Okay. Higia lakipa shamamina but it's kechavim also live nice.
לא מפחד.
Lamaisa avoboinen imoem. You're allowed to build bimusyois ubeis merchatzois. What are bimusyois? Bimusyois is, it's like a mizbeach where you shech the animal, and then use the animal to serve Avodah Zarah. So that's like a hechsher mitzvah to Avodah Zarah. That's a hechsher avera that you're allowed to help them build. And also, beis merchatzois bathhouses. But even in the bathhouses, right, today you have a whole town we went to in Rome. It's unbelievable. It's called Astia Antica, which is an entire city that is preserved. The ruins are preserved. You see their bathhouses, you see their homes, you see everything, a whole, like 50,000 people used to live there. It's all still standing. And you see that in their bathhouses, they used to have on the dome of the bathhouse, they used to have Avodah Zarah. And at Higia Lakipa, when you build the Beis HaMerchatz, you're allowed to build a bathhouse. But when you reach the dome of the bathhouse where they're going to store their Avodah Zarahs, there you can't build. Shamamina but it's kechavim also livnas. That you can't build. We have a couple of contractors over here. Half the shiur over here is contractors. So if you ever build a Beis Merchatz with a guy, the kippah, you're not allowed to build because it has Avodah Zarah. Okay. Amar Rav Chana. The top, the dome. Oh, the top. It's called the kippah. You're saying that's what it's called, the kippah.
Yeah, right.
The kippah.
Uh-huh. Right.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Started like keep
Love it.
It's
Love it. That's good. Amar Rav Chana bar Chisda, Amar Rav Chana bar Rav Amar Rav. Chaya gasa. Harei kebehema daka lepirchus. A chaya gasa is like a behema daka lepirchus v'leila mechira. So we have to give a little introduction to what's going on here. What's lepirchus? What's pirchus? Pirchus means the spasming. Yeah, the jerking that the behema jerks when you shecht it, right? It starts moving around, spasming. So the halacha is that you have to make sure that the behema is alive before the shechita and it dies from the shechita. Because the behema died before the shechita was a kosher shechita, that means it became an avela before it got shechted, and you're not allowed to eat it. So how do you know if the behema is alive as you shecht it? It's called pirchas. Pirchas means that it depends. For behema gasa, it's just the foreleg, like jumps out, right? If the foreleg moves right before the shechita, you know that when the knife comes onto the neck of the animal, you know that it was alive right beforehand and it's kosher. And by behema daka, it's not enough for the foreleg to project outward. It has to project outward and then inward. Okay, it has to go both ways for a sign of life before the shechita. So Rav comes with a chiddush and he says, Chaya gasa, harehi kebehema daka. When you're dealing with a chaya gasa, it has to be, like a behema gasa, and it has to go outward and inward to prove that, you see it over there, what do you got? Oh wow! You see how it moves the foreleg, the legs that's being held. Look how it's moving it. Wow, that's amazing. Look, it's shechting it. Take a look what happens to the legs right before you shecht it. See, look.
Oh.
See, it goes back like this. You see that? That's a pirchas, mamish.
It's a behema gasa or a
That's a behema daka. The behema daka, that's the halacha. It's goats. Oh no, I just see the blood. Okay. Huh?
See that?
Unbelievable.
It's like the animals know, it knows right before it's getting shot.
Right before it gets shechted, it knows, right. So you need a sign of life so you know it dies from the shechita. So the Gemara says, Rav says,
I was like, how can you see that? Maybe you could have had a heart attack.
what?
Say that it was
That's right. That's why it needs to give even if it's not a heart thing, but if it's moving like that, we know it's alive. We know it's alive.
Behema gasa should have more movement because it's more jerking.
No, behema gasa, you don't need as much.
it's bigger.
It's bigger. So only if it moves, Oh, you're saying you should have more because it's bigger?
Yeah, and it's more crease.
No, because it's harder.
Fast
It's a
people
big.
move
It's a
slow.
big. Yeah, it's not. It moves slower. Yeah. A chaya gasa though, a wild large animal, is like a behema daka. That's what Rav's chiddush is. It needs a jerking of both directions. That's lepirchas. Aval loy lemechira, but not with regard to mechira. What does it mean not with regard to mechira? So a chaya gasa, we know again. Mishnah said a behema gasa, you're never allowed to sell a behema gasa to a goy. Behema daka depends on the minig hamakom. What about a chaya gasa? A chaya gasa, Rav says, is different than a behema daka, and you have to treat it like a behema gasa. You're never allowed to sell a chaya gasa to a goy. So a chaya gasa, I guess, has two statuses. It has, with regard to pirchas, it's like a behema daka, right? So in other words, when you shecht, it has to project its leg outward and inward, both directions, to know that it's alive. But with regard to mechira to a guy, when you want to sell it to a guy, it has the din of a behema gasa, which you're never allowed to sell, unlike a behema daka, which depends on the minhag hamakom. Chaya gasa is wild. It's wild. Anything that's wild. The moose is wild. I'm assuming a moose is wild. Yeah. A behema gasa would be a shiur, right? A chaya gasa. What else would be a chaya gasa? A kosher chaya gasa we're talking about, right?
Buffalo.
A buffalo is a chaya gasa, right? Yeah. Bison, right? Very good. So the Gemara says, Rav says that with regard to pirchas, it's like a behema daka. With regards to mechir, it's like a behema gasa. Ani over, and Rav Chanan himself says, I argue on Rav. Ani omer afla mechira. The din of a chaya gasa is like a behema daka also by mechira. Which means, it depends on the minhag hamakom. Makom shenahagu limkar moichrin, sheloi limkar ein moichrin. That's the halacha. So the Gemara is going to challenge Rav Chanan's halacha. Rav Chanan claims that a chaya gasa is like a behema daka with regard to selling it to a guy. Remember, again, we have to keep this in mind. The Mishnah says, behema gasa you're never allowed to sell to a guy. A behema daka depends on the minhag hamakom. What about a chaya gasa? How do we classify that? Is it like a behema gasa which you're never allowed to sell to a guy? Or is a chaya gasa like a behema daka which you're allowed to sell based on the minhag? Gemara is going to say, Tanan, I want to bring a raya from this Mishnah we just learned. You're not allowed to sell bears and lions. And you can't sell anything that if you sell it to a guy, it can potentially damage the rabbin. Taima, the reason is benezik l'rabbin. The reason why you're not allowed to sell these chayas, a lion or a dove, is because it's potentially going to be mazik l'rabbin. Halez benezik l'rabbin, but if it's a chaya gasa, which, let's say, it's a domesticated lion. I don't know if you ever saw any videos how people live with these lions sometimes, or these bears. Have you ever seen these videos? I mean, the ones that you showed me with the beard, that's forget about it. That's for sure not domesticated.
It's the ones who raised,
they were raised when they were young as little animals, right? So here we're talking about, that sounds like in the Mishnah, only a lion that's wild. It's on the loose. It was never raised or domesticated by a human being. But if you have a lion, for example, that is nisgadil, and it was taught, it was trained, right? Shari, that's mutter. Because the Mishnah only says you can't sell a ari or a dove, sheyesh by nezik l'rabim. But if it's not nezik l'rabim, it's mutter. So what do we see from here? We see that Rav is right. Rav says that a chaya gasa, that Rav Chanan is right. The chaya gasa you're allowed to sell if there's no nezik l'rabim.
Well, it shows that you see that you can really train an animal really well.
Okay, that's a different conversation. Yeah, l'chayra, yeah, you could say that. You could say that. Even though anytime I watch any of these videos, my heart drops. I'm like, oh my gosh. It just takes 1 second, one split second for a wrong move and they'll devour them alive. I mean, it's always very scary to watch these stuff. But anyway, it sounds like a chaya gasa, which is trained, you're allowed to sell to a guy. Because the Mishnah only answers anything that's not trained, anything that's not domesticated, which is nezik l'rabim. Amar Rabba Barula, no, you don't have a raya from here. Over here we're talking about ba'ari shavur. When the Mishnah says that only if it has a nezik l'rabim, it's usher to sell, but if it doesn't have a nezik l'rabim, it's mutter. You know what kind of nezik l'rabim it doesn't have, and it's mutter? It's ari shavur v'aliv de Rabbi Yehuda. If it's, oh wow, this is a domesticated lion?
Yeah, domesticated.
Okay, Rabbi Yoel, we have to talk before the shiur, so we can bring the screen out.
You sure it's real?
אבל הבחור הזה אכלו אותו.
You could domesticate a lion. We're going to show the guys over here.
Okay, it's about to turn off.
Okay. Okay. Amar Rabba Barula, no. So the Gemara says no. Really, even a domesticated lion, you're not allowed to sell to a guy. Dik in the Mishnah is you're allowed to. That's ba'ari shaver v'aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. It's only when the lion has a broken leg, right? Mamish, it's decapitated. Something not decapitated by its neck, but something that is that's slowing it down. Handicapped. Rav Ashi Omar. Rav Ashi says another thing. Stam Ari Shoverhu Eitzel Malacha. You should know that Stam Arayis, you know that a lion sleeps most of the day, right? I think, what is it? And it has the female, it goes and hunts. The lion, the male, right?
Sephardic.
That's what it's.
Sephardic lion.
Sephardic lion. Right? In Lakewood, they say a Lakewood lion. Anyway, Kitzer, whatever it is.
Yeah, Lakewood lion.
Yeah. Whatever it is, the female goes out and works, the lion does nothing. It just sleeps all day. Says the Gemara,
This is what you
huh?
Your wife works.
Ooh, he's
brings
Gabber
the
Kari.
Sephardic. The real
My
one.
son says he is his Gabber Kari like the male lion who sleeps all day.
Turn it upside down.
Yeah. Either way, you see, so Gemara says Ari is different. Ari, because they're stam, they're like Einam Ruyim Lamalacha. They don't work. So Mela, you are, if there's no Nezik L'Rabim, they're different. But you can't prove from an Ari to other Chaya Gasa. Ask the Gemara, Mesavei, Kishem she'ein moichel lehem be'megasa. Kach ein moichel lehem Chaya Gasa. Now we ask in Rav Chanan, what do you mean? In this Bryce it says clearly, it equates Behem Megasa and Chaya Gasa. That you're never allowed to sell Chaya Gasa, regardless of its state, regardless of its domestication. You're never allowed to sell, just like you're not allowed to sell Behem Megasa. And even if there's a minute to sell Behem Medaka, which that you're allowed to, the Mishnah says. But Chaya Gasa, ain't moichelen. You're never allowed to sell a Chaya Gasa. So Gemara says, this Bryce is Taka Kasha. It's a raya to Rav, but it's Tiyufta the Rav Chana bar Rava Tiyufta. It's a Kasha on Rav Chana bar Rava, who classifies a Chaya Gasa like a Behem Medaka. And here in the Bryce it says clearly that a Chaya Gasa is classified like a Behem Gasa. You're never allowed to sell it. By the way, remember we learned Baba Basra. Anybody who remembers? There's Rashbam. At any time the word Tiyufta appears in Shas, quotes Rabbeinu Chananel, Tiyufta means there is no. Sometimes the Gemara leaves it by a kasha, right? Or a take or take by kasha or Tiyufta, two types of lashonis. A kasha means that the Gemara had terutzim. The Gemara didn't want to get involved in the teretz, but if you think hard enough, you'll be able to answer it. A Tiyufta, according to Ben Chananel, Tiyufta is mamish so strong that don't even bother. It's like the tzarachin godel of Hashem yor einai of Rabbi Kiva Eger. So anyway, here we have Tiyufta.
Double time.
A double Tiyufta, right? Yeah, forget about it.
Sometimes it's twice.
It's usually twice. Tiyufta, the Rechon Rabbi, yeah, it's usually two.
When we said Tzarachin, we thought about it for 15 seconds. The Tzarachin God, they thought about it for 30 seconds.
That's to say, yeah.
It's just gonna take you, Rabbi.
Interesting. Teiku, the Rambam doesn't talk about. Rambam just talks about the difference between kasha and tiyufta. Teiku means, okay, we have to wait. Yeah?
And Tiyufta also have to wait.
Right, but it doesn't say teiku, so I'm not sure. Okay.
Take on the Tiyufta, got it.
Tiyufta means Yimamid looks no teretz. Ravina Rama Mastisna Brisa Meshana. Ravina asked a steerer from the Mishnah to the Brisa, and he answered also. Tanan, it says, Ein moichel lehen dubin v'arayis. You're not allowed to sell to a goy. You're not allowed to sell beers and lions. And you're not allowed to sell any animal that could potentially harm people. Time is benezek. The only reason why you're not allowed to sell a chaya gasa is because it can damage, can harm others. Halesbe, nezek. But if, let's say, it's a lion or a beer that's been domesticated or trained, moichin, you're allowed to. Ask the Gemara of a mini. I'll ask you a steer from a brisa. You're never allowed to sell a chaya gasa. It doesn't matter if it's trained or not, domesticated or not. You're never allowed to sell it. Even if the minig is to sell a be'madaka, but chaya gasa ain't meichrin, so it's a stira. In one brisa it says you're never allowed to sell chaya gasa. In the Mishnah it says it depends if it's nezik l'rabim or not. So which one is it? Gemara says a mashani. No, the Mishnah is talking about. The Mishnah says that you're allowed to if it doesn't damage or harm other people. That's ba'ari shover v'alibu de Rabbi Yehuda. We're talking about it's not just domesticated, but it's more than that. It's broken. So if it's broken, there it's mamish not a chashash, no chashash molach on Shabbos or anything else. So that's why it's mutter. Ravashi says also the other teretz that he said earlier, stam ari shoveru etzel malacha. Ari is lazy. Ari doesn't really work. So mamela with an ari, there's never a chashash that if you sell it to a guy, he's going to come to use it on Shabbos. All this chashashes of malacha doesn't apply to an ari. Masker lar nachman man leimulon dari chaya gasi. Okay, this Gemara I don't understand so well. Maybe somebody can help me over here. But the Gemara asks, man leimulon dari chaya gasi. Who's the one who tells us, who told us that an ari is a chaya gasa? Dilma chaya dakahi. Maybe it's a chaya daka. What does this mean? How does an ari, a lion should be a chaya daka? What does a daka mean? How does it translate over there? Chaya gasa versus chaya daka.
Domesticated versus
Small versus large? Wow. Aha. So in other words, here daka is not just domesticated; it's also small. So the Gemara wants to know maybe chaya right? Maybe it's a chaya daka and not a chaya gasa. I don't know. If you look at the size of a lion, right, and the size of an elephant or a buffalo or a bison, those are large. The truth is, it's a cat. I guess a lion is really a cat. I mean, how large is really a lion? I mean, it's scary. It's pretty big. It's the mane, right? Yeah, the mane makes it look larger than it really is. It's trying to make an argument that a lion is small. Yeah? A female lion?
How much is a lion?
Yeah. What is it? 600 pounds? On average, what does an animal in the jungle weigh? I'm assuming it's more than a
Male lion
lion.
between 330 and 550.
Oh, okay. 330 and 550.
400-ish, 450.
Not so big.
Okay, but a bear is...
A bear is 1,000 pounds, no? Yeah. Elephant. Okay.
Bear, yeah, up to 1,500 it says.
Just bear with me.
Typical bear, 800 to 1,200. So double. It's double.
Wow. Okay, so for sure, there's room to argue that an ari is behemoth is a chaya daka.
You could say like that's a big bear, but like you could say a big lion also.
Buffalo, 1,000 to 2,000. Yeah,
Okay, so it's considered, it's fairly, what is it?
You could say that a big lion weighs the same as much.
Okay, no, I mean a large lion, no, it's 330 to 500 pounds.
Yeah.
That's the average. A bear is 800 to 1,000,
800
at
to
least,
1,200.
to 1,200. Yeah, the average animal, I guess,
Elephant is 5,000 to 14,000. But
a
5,000
giraffe is
baby.
probably also a lot.
You know, that's a baby. The regular is probably like, 10,000.
Wow.
Typical behemoth dog.
Okay.
That way.
So that's how if you classify based on that.
But this is a chaya daka. Chaya daka maybe is a little more, but the point is that relative to chaya gasa, you have to do it relative to chaya
You have a
gasa.
lot of, right, hippo, you have rhinoceros, you have a lot of
Yeah, a
big
lot of chayas that are like, yeah. And by the way, if you ever watch any of these National Geographics or like Planet Earth, yeah, not recommended, but sometimes it's like you watch it. It's the Floy Sabaya. You see that if a lion wants to attack an elephant, it can't do it on its own. It
right,
needs
yeah,
a whole
sure,
herd of
yes.
lions to like work together to bring
Pride,
down
a whole
a
pride.
pride. There we go. That's the word.
lions.
Yeah, pride of lions. Yeah. Says the Gemara, Rav Ashi Daik Masis Moshe Tiyufta. Let's just finish over here. Rav Ashi is Madaik from the Mishnah, and he asks a kasha on Rav Chanan. Nan, ein moichlan, duben v'arayis v'loy kol dov sheyesh melgrabim. Mishnah says you're not allowed to sell bears or lions because it could damage people. Time is benezik only when it can harm others. So lesbe nezik moichrin you're not allowed to sell. Meaning you are allowed to sell. V'taima, and the reason is ari the stam ari shavro etzla malacha. Avamida achwina David malacha lo. You're never allowed to sell a chaya gasa if it could do malacha. Tiyufta rechan v'rova tiyufta. In other words, the Gemara has another tiyufta. Okay. Gemara says, "V'chaya gasa mias mai malacha avda." Let's just say we're talking about a chaya gasa. It's also to sell it because it can do malacha on Shabbos. What kind of malacha is a chaya gasa going to do for you? Right? A behemoth gasa could plow for you. A behemoth gasa, I guess, could carry luggage for you. But if you sell a lion, let's just say a chaya gasa, which you're allowed, let's just say you're allowed to sell it because not. What kind of malacha is going to do? A malacha on Shabbos that's usher. Yeah. Abaye says. He says in the household of Mar Yuchni, they would actually grind teichen al yidei arudim with wild donkeys. They would use the wild donkeys to grind it. So in other words, it's a chaya gasa. It's in the category of a chaya gasa. So that's why you could use any of these chayas gasas to do malacha of teichen. Stop over. I just want to tell you a story I just heard today. Yeah, just a quick maisa. And end with this. This is an amazing story. Somebody sent me, I got it from two different people. I haven't verified the names yet. But this story is just unbelievable. It's heartbreaking, but it has such a message. There's this mother who had her son fighting in Gaza recently. And she went to sleep one night and she had a dream that her son and his entire unit were killed. They were killed in battle. And she was at her son's levaya, and the dream was very, very vivid. Now, I know you're not a stranger to dreams because you told me about the dream your wife had about your father coming. So, and I also had some dreams. You know, we all have dreams are sometimes very potent. So she has this dream that her son died and she's at the levaya. She wakes up in a panic and she calls up headquarters. She calls up, the captain, and she's like, "Listen, my son needs to come home. My son needs to come home." She's like, "I can't sleep. She's like, let him come home let him come over for the weekend, for Shabbos." Anyway, he comes home, gets him home, and sure enough, Friday night news broke that his unit was involved in a battle, and 7 soldiers were killed. He was the 8th one who was supposed to be there, but at the same time the 7 soldiers were killed, this soldier had a heart attack and died as well. Yeah.
Wow.
And the mother realized, and this is just the Munah, that when a person's time comes, a lot of times we think the accident that I not gone there, but I gone there, I'll pull out from here and I'll pull out from there, financial losses, whatever you think is the reason, just know it's only the messenger, it's only the puppet. It can happen a million different ways. When time is up, the time is up. And what do I want you to take away? Therefore, as long as Kolzman Shaner Doilik, as long as we have time, it's a gift. Keep coming to the shiur. Not because it's my shiur, just because keep coming. Don't stay consistent. Okay, it's because it's my shiur. Stay consistent. Keep learning. Keep steiging, because all of our time is limited. We should only hear B'surah
I'm going to add one point to that. Now, when Hashem was creating the Malachim, and He gave the Malachim Abed his job, He complained. He said, "How come I'm going to have this job? Everyone's going to hate me.
Yes.
Other Malachim are great. They're going to hate me. I'm the Malachim." So Hashem says, "You know what? You're right. So I'm going to do you a favor. No one will ever blame you. They blame the accident, like you said. They blame this. They're never going to blame you.
Here's a medrash like that?
That's a friend once told me that.
You got to find me that. That's amazing. Okay, wow.
Good shot, right?